The second mouth. The day it started, there was nothing to tell it from other days, except the way my mug left a heavier ring on the counter than it should have. The coffee had cooled. I set the mug down without paying attention, then lifted it and saw the circle like a wet seal. Leo laughed at the cat video on my phone and then reminded me, solemn, that he'd lost another tooth at lunch, which gave him the look of a boy whose mouth was learning algebra. He held it out to me in a napkin, proud as if he had done it on purpose. I put the napkin in the dish by the sink with 2 pennies and a dried-out violet petal, and pretended not to think about what I would put under his pillow later. The refrigerator hummed in that steady, competent tone I have come to believe is a domestic virtue. The towel on the oven handle kept its folded shape like a person minding S-turns. The traffic light at the corner outside our window blinked to green and then red, green, red with that discipline you envy during weeks when your own body won't keep a schedule. There wasn't a reason to think about water. The faucet gave its clear, thin stream and tasted as it always did, faint iron at the beginning and then honest. I stood with Leo at the sink and washed his hands after dinner because he'd been in the schoolyard garden digging, and that dirt, even when it's blessed by a teacher and a bag of commercial compost, lives under fingernails with the determination of someone staying late at work to finish. Your palms, I said. He loves to make them into cups when he holds water. Show me. He opened them to me. That theatrical, trusting move children do when you ask to see their hands, as if you were going to read their future. That's when I felt the bump. A small, hard point under the skin of his right palm, right below the fingers, where a callus would grow if he were a man who did ropes. It was not a splinter, not a thorn. It had the exact insult of a pebble in a shoe. "What did you get into?" I asked. I said it lightly because I am not the mother who says the thing you will carry into a room in 20 years. I pressed it with my thumb. He flinched. "It's my secret pee," he said, delighted with his phrasing. He closed his hand around nothing and laughed because he still has permission to love his own jokes. I kissed his crown, the place where his hair smells like the sun. "You're growing a garden in there," I said. We rinsed. The hose water sound in the pipe rattled lightly. Whoever lives above us uses more water than a person needs, and the building's old throat lets you know about it. I dried his hands with the towel, in the forgiving way you learn as a parent, patting rather than rubbing, and thought about the napkin with the tooth in it, and left the rest of the night to accomplish itself. When I kissed him goodnight, his mouth was a cousin of a jack-o'-lantern's. He made the sound of a small engine revving to scare me, because when children want to make you laugh, they often choose noise. After he drifted, I picked up the mug and washed away the ring and left the towel right, corners matching corners, because I like that domestic geometry. The refrigerator compressor clicked, then settled. The number on the clock became a shape I could forgive. The barcode scanner at work had been beeping all day, and the sound lived in me. That small digital chirp that is a promise of a tally, not a song. It followed me into bed, the way worry will tuck itself under your shoulder and pretend to be useful. In the morning, the bump was bigger. I noticed it the way you notice anything new on your child's body, with the odd double sight of fear and foolish optimism. I had him show me again, like a parlor trick. Leo splayed his fingers in a showman's flourish. The skin at his palm was tight over something white and hard, not a thorn, not a rock, not anything I had taught myself how to remove. I thought of house words, calcium, grit, cyst, and how my mother would say, with the confidence of a woman raised with salves, "Soak it." And so I filled a bowl with warm water and stirred in salt until I felt righteous. We soaked. The water warmed to his small temperature. He watched me with serious eyes, trusting me to be the person who understands how things go back to how they were. At breakfast, he didn't want toast. He wanted yogurt and to lick the spoon, and I let him because I've learned where battles are dignified and where they aren't tea. He ate half and watched the spoon as if it knew an answer. The traffic light outside cycled like an organ, tapping its own chest with small energy. The refrigerator hum had a slightly higher pitch as the day warmed and the motor did its work. I kept touching the towels, refolding, smoothing, as if there were an equation I could balance by keeping them neat. The receipt from yesterday's groceries lay under the magnet on the fridge, shaped like a lighthouse, and I read the items as a way to pretend I was recalling a dream. Milk, X2, bread, X1, apples, envoy. The lighthouse had come free with a fundraiser for the ferry. A cartoon boat wore smiling eyes. It made me angry, which is the sort of thing not worth confessing to anyone who doesn't live with you. He came home with dirt on his knees and a paper crown he had made in art. My neighbor tipped her head over the stairwell railing to tell me she'd heard they'd have to shut the school a day next week because the boiler was wheezing itself sick. I laughed. That small, half-choked laugh you do when institutions apologize to you with an announcement in a hallway. The building smelled like old varnish and lemon cleaner, and somebody's dinner thinking about itself. Leo grabbed the banister and swung his legs one step below him and then one step ahead of him. "Don't," I said. He said, "Okay," without meaning it. That night, after pajamas and the stories in which animals behave more politely than people, I looked at his hand again. The bump had split the top layer of skin, a tiny pearl grey crack. Under it, white, glossy. In my head, I saw the crowns of teeth in a childish jaw, asking gravity to be patient. I picked up the little flashlight we keep in the drawer with the rubber bands and unsharpened pencils and pointed the light at his palm. It gleamed with a polish that didn't belong to it. Not pus, not a blister, not anything my mother's kitchen cure could coax back. "Does it hurt?" I asked. I tried to be the sort of mother whose voice has iron rails under it when she asks questions. "It's sore," he said, the word he has for anything between pain and everything else, like when I hold the monkey bars too long. "Soak again," I said, because I had only one tool. The hose water sound in the pipe clattered and the faucet fell into its thread. I held his hand while he sat on the counter, swinging his heels against the cupboard, thump, thump, the way a room in a memory will make you know exactly where you are. The warm water had the faint chemical smell of the town's maintenance days, that not quite lemon that rides your skin. Afterward, I spread a layer of the general ointment you use for everything you do not want to admit you cannot fix. A small, perfumed reassurance, as if replaced skin could be asked to obey. He slept. I lay on my side and waited for my mind to do the one kind thing it knows and drop me. The apartment held its late noises. Our refrigerator, the neighbor's television's artificial laughter, the far siren that doesn't announce a neighbor's tragedy, but does insist that a night's script is broader than any of our individual lines. The traffic light on the corner gives off a little hum if you are the kind of person who listens for it. I am the kind of person who listens. By morning, there were 2 points, 2 small white nubs under thin, blushing skin, side by side, like the beginnings of the front pair in a baby's mouth. The seam of skin at the first had widened, and the second press lifted up next to it. I touched gently with a cotton swab. Leo drew his hand back, embarrassed by the reflex. He is proud of being brave. He swallows it when a shot is coming, but he looks away. He did not look away now. He studied his hand as if he could will it to change shape. "I think we should see the doctor," I said, sentences arranged with the scaffolding I have for calm. He nodded. He trusts doctors in the way children do when things have always gone well. At Alder Family Health, the fluorescent fixtures sang their thin praise song to daylight. The receptionist had the same hair she has worn for 15 years, a curl on her shoulder that never belonged to any particular decade. The room smelled like old carpet and hand sanitizer. Somewhere a radio between stations complained in a tired mutter, not loud enough to make anyone admit it. A mother with a baby watched the television mounted in the corner with the boredom of someone who has done this 6 times. The baby slept with its mouth open, its tongue a little petal. Leo sat with his palm turned down on his leg to hide the thing. It looked like shyness. It looked like shame. I filled out a page because clinics believe in making you write your name, address, and a broken version of your history to remind you they know where to mail things. The nurse called us back through the swinging door into the corridor where the light is always a little meaner. She weighed him on the mechanical scale he loves. He flexed his toes to make the sliders move and laughed, and the nurse allowed the ritual with the flourish of someone giving a party trick its due. In the exam room, the paper on the table crackled under him. The doctor, young enough to have a secretary who still calls him doctor, looked at the palm and did a human thing. His mouth grew smaller. He didn't take a step back. He leaned in. He put on gloves because that is what a person does when they come to work. He touched one of the points with a finger and then pressed gently around the base. "How long?" he asked. "Yesterday," I said. I added, trying to say it first so he wouldn't. "He's 7. He's lost front teeth in the last month. He doesn't have any braces. I didn't..." The doctor nodded, hearing everything I thought I'd have to explain, because he's one of those who listens to what lives between your words when you hope they will not publish themselves. "Any splinters?" he asked Leo. "Any big digs?" Leo considered the grandeur he could claim from the school garden and didn't take it. He shook his head. The doctor said terms like dermoid and inclusion with that careful caution you want in a person who is unwilling to be clever at the expense of the real. He made a face at his own words, as if to say he didn't trust them either. "We'll do an image," he said. "It may be nothing." He took a picture with his phone and sent it to himself with the hurried jargon of explanation we all use when we have to work with machines that aren't ours. "This town," he said, as if deciding to risk saying something about it. Then he didn't, which relieved me and injured me at once, because if someone doesn't say a thing, you are allowed to keep your own version. The X-ray tech called us down a hall with a floor that shines a little too much for a weekday. The machine's hum made a low sound like a refrigerator that has had enough but will keep going for the sake of the room. Leo put his hand flat on the plate with the obedience of someone who thinks obedience brings freedom. The image bloomed on the monitor. Bones I knew and bones I didn't want to. The 2 white caps under skin had roots like crowns waiting. Behind them, like a little field refused by an owner who didn't mow, more. The tech shifted his weight, his shoes complaining a little. "Well," he said, because there was nothing else to say without making us belong to a story the clinic would prefer not to tell. In the doctor's office, the screen glowed a blue that makes even familiar things look like they've lost their innocence. He pointed at the image with a capped pen, careful over the place where my boy's hand lived. "Sometimes, and I need you to hear me say sometimes, children have terrestrial cells where they shouldn't," he said. Not a lecture, not an apology. It's teeth tissue, likely. It believes it belongs somewhere else. We want to think of these as misfiled, not malicious. He drew a small, invisible circle with his pen in the air, as if coaxing a thought to become a better one. We can refer. Orthopedics, dentistry, pediatrics, a team. "Can you take them out?" I asked. My voice did not shake. Leo looked at me with confidence I didn't deserve. "We will want to be very careful," the doctor said. And there was that small professional chime in his tone that tells you he has left you in the lobby while he goes behind a door you cannot follow. He printed a piece of paper that had 3 numbers on it and 2 names. He touched Leo's shoulder as we left the room, humanly, as if to say, "You belong here, even if the words are wrong." I called the first number in the parking lot. The line was busy with the sound of 100 other mothers, their own names being recited to a woman who has a head full of schedules, and the click, hold, click of a man telling someone to fax. I called the second and left a message. The third answered and said the name of the practice in a tone that made it sound like a hymn. The soonest appointment was Thursday. "Due to staffing," the woman said apologetically, "we have limited." "Thursday," I said. It was Monday. My mouth had trouble swallowing. As I drove the 3 blocks home, the traffic light at the corner where State meets Hart hummed and counted itself down. A county truck had 1 orange light on and 1 off, and the 2 of them argued their way up Harbour Street. In the rearview mirror, I watched my son look at his hand, his mouth set flat, not a child's, a trying to be useful mouth. We passed the grocery, and I could hear the barcode beeps in my head, the sound a machine makes when it believes in tallying. The ferry horn blew for a departure, and the sound moved through the air in a way that seemed far too patient for the day we were having. The water at our sink ran a little white when I turned it on. I let it go a minute, then 2 until it ran clear. I remembered the notice the county had taped to the building door 2 weeks ago about mains flushes and recommended we run our taps after each event. Out of an abundance of caution, bring to a rolling boil for 1 minute for children and elderly. The paper had curled at the bottom where someone's wet bag had leaned against it. I had read it, nodded, and then used water the way a person will, choosing the version of the world where consequences pinch other people and trying to be true in small ways somewhere else instead. That night, I put a mug on the counter and left it there because my hands could not be made to obey my version of neatness. The refrigerator hummed. The traffic light flickered and steadied. In the quiet between 2 noises the apartment makes, I heard a faint click that did not belong to a machine I know. It came from down the hall where his room is. I told myself it was the ancient thermostat in the radiator asserting itself, a little metal throat clearing. I put my hand on the counter and pressed until the wood had another body to think about. I tried not to imagine teeth moving where hands should be still. At 2 in the morning, the high white sound of my own fear woke me. I stood in his doorway and watched him sleep. His hand was under the pillow like a prize. I almost left it there because mothers have learned to avoid waking children, but I couldn't. I eased his hand out. The gentle extraction we are trained to, so practiced I could do it blind. The skin was stretched smoother. The points, now 3, pushed against the surface in a geometry my mind refused to let my mouth witness. I took the flashlight and saw the enamel shine. He stirred, not much. I pressed the tissue across the palm and felt it give a tiny bit like gum does, and I thought about the word gingiva and wished I didn't know it. I backed away from my son, from my boy with the mouth in his hand, and hated myself for that retreat. By Wednesday, the points had lined neatly, 4 across, a row that would have looked sweet in another context. The doctor called with a voice offered for stepping stones. "We have imaging back from radiology," he said. "I don't want to say they've..." He paused. I could hear the fluorescent in his office tone. "I've seen this in journals," he said finally. "Rare. We throw around words like teratoma when we have to speak to each other. It's not always dangerous. We will need a team." The receptionist at the school had called to say a plumbing issue would make them close for 2 days. "We're all over town right now," she said. "Boil water, they say. Out of caution," she added, used to being the mouth for a town that apologizes in printed notices and then climbs back into its routines. "We ate apples in slices because Leo couldn't bear to hold one whole. He brought the slices to his right palm and then moved it away as if he had forgotten why he delifted them toward that hand in the first place. Left," I reminded him, and he switched obediently. He watched his right hand like a helper willing to be called. I rubbed lotion into my hands after washing dishes, and my skin didn't know what to do with the smell, some sort of professional lavender the store had put on sale and I'd purchased, because I wanted to be a person who still noticed little luxuries. It made me think of myself, and I wanted to think of nobody. At midnight I woke to a new sound, not a click this time. a soft, wet working, not overtly disgusting. The sound a person makes chewing with their mouth closed. My throat flamed with denial. The room had the deep black of our building at night when the stairwell light is off and the neighbor's refrigerator is doing its heavier cycle. I stood with my hand on the doorframe and listened. The sound came from his room, the wet click of teeth meeting flesh. I pressed my knuckles into my jaw. The refrigerator hummed politely, suppressing a louder rhythm. In the quiet after the compressor cut out, and before it came back, the sound was clean. His hand was under his pillow again. The mouth in his hand was eating in his sleep, a small, careful eating. I woke him without meaning to. His eyes opened calmly. He lifted the hand. A new shine lay beneath the skin now. The line of white teeth had grown taller. The little seam of his lifeline had been pushed outward and made a new path. He looked at me with his ordinary child face. "Does it hurt?" I asked, because I am an idiot and a mother. "It's sore," he said. He closed his eyes. I sat on the edge of his bed and listened to the refrigerator gather itself again and start up, giving me the alibi of a machine to lay over a child's hand eating itself. Thursday morning, the practice across town had me in an exam room where everything was stainless or meant to look like it. The dental chair made a little sigh, as if grateful to be the person in the room holding news that might be good. Two specialists came in, a woman with black hair up and a man with the sort of gentle walk men adopt when they are trying not to make a room flinch. The woman wore loops around her neck like a trophy, but her face had no pride in it, only a grave competence. She looked at his hand. She did not say anything for a long 2 seconds. "It looks like ectopic dental tissue," she said, speaking to the space between me and the boy, as if anything could fall there and be held. "We very rarely see this, and not..." She left the rest of the sentence unbuilt in the air. The man, the orthopedist, spoke in the old language of wrists, tendons, things bound into our use. "We do not want to harm function," he said. "He is young. His brain will map itself around even unusual areas, but we have to remember nerves." They wheeled in a machine. The gel the technician put on his palm was cool and unkind. The screen showed something like nodules under the teeth, clusters in waiting. They conferred over him as if he were both a patient and a thesis. They were careful not to use the Latin in a way that would turn the room into a seminar. Still, words like odontogenic and malformation slipped quietly into the air as if they belonged there. The man excused himself to make a call. The woman took a picture with a device that had nothing to recommend it, except its exact purpose. "All the teeth," she murmured, not meaning to. "So perfect." A nurse explained to me what they would not do yet. "We'd prefer to wait for a team consult," she said, "and coordinating makes everything take longer." I nodded as if this were a weather report. The nurse handed me a pamphlet with a cover photo of a smiling child, and I almost laughed out loud in the room where children who smile do not have mouths in their hands. On the way out, the fluorescent tubes buzzed. The woman at the desk slid me a folder with the quiet pleasure of completing an action. "We'll call," she said, and because she is someone who knows what happens when people don't, she put her finger under the last word and pushed. At home, Leo sat on the couch with a blanket while I made him pasta, because pasta is the food we give to children we cannot save that day. He twirled his fork with his left hand neatly. He tucked his right hand into the blanket. When I asked if he wanted sauce, he shook his head and then nodded, and the dignity of his ambivalence made me want to put my face down and be ate with him. I told him a story about a dog that stole socks because the only stories he can bear now are thefts and victories. He has stopped loving the ones where the animals politely share. I didn't tell him the part about the night noise. The next morning, a notice on the building door. The tape had bubbled from weather, oily under my fingers. "Water service interruption. Valve replacement. Expect discoloration. Boil advisory extended. I took a picture of it because my body had decided to collect evidence. I boiled water dutifully. The sound of the rolling boil made the kitchen's walls sing. The steam spread a film over the stainless in the sink, and I watched my reflection blur and tear and reform. The mug's ring on the counter from last night had deepened into a stain. I put my fingerprint into it and watched it print itself on my skin like a simple idea. I didn't wash it away. I wanted to see something shift. At 11, the power flickered. A quick shiver of light and then dark, a glitch in the tight net of the chair and the clock in the fridge. The refrigerator paused. The traffic light at the corner obediently switched to a flashing red, which made the drivers forget how to be human. Sirens agreed with each other somewhere across town, and then did not. The apartment made its heavy quiet, as if it had swallowed a breath to avoid being undone by the long, bright daylight. The scanner app on my phone, which I rarely let myself open, burped a line of traffic about outages and minor incidents, and then said something that made the hairs in my arms stand up. 10:12 to base. Notify public health. That school call has 3 now. Same hand. Somebody coughed, their voice inside the phone as if in the kitchen with me. The app burbled its little static. I closed it. I put the phone face down. I wiped a clean part of the counter as if I could make clean another place if I made that one spotless enough. Leo's hand had grown more. The row of 4 teeth had become 6. The gum line, that word is a joke here, but we have to call it something, had made a neat half moon across his palm. The skin had thinned to a taut, pale tissue. I put an ice pack wrapped in a towel on it, and he sighed with relief and anger. The modus of the day, not pain, not comfort, something feral between. That night, I woke to chewing again, and this time it was louder. I turned off the fridge and stood still in the kitchen, the night hearing me make that wrong decision. In the stillness, I could hear it cleanly, a jaw rhythm smaller than a person's but intimately so. I stood outside his door and didn't go in. I put my palm flat to the wood, and the grain pressed into my hand, and came away as a little redness. And it looked like a print, not mine, the kind you see in ink. I kept my hand there until the chewing stopped. When the refrigerator gave up and turned itself back on, in a kind of wounded bravado, I turned the dial down and apologized to it. On Friday, the clinic called and asked if I could bring him in to see a team at the hospital downtown. The woman's voice had the compressed optimism of someone who is not permitted to be the person who says the thing plainly. "We have internet down," she added, "so we're writing everything by hand. Can you bring your papers?" I set the folder on the counter next to the mug and turned the mug at an angle that made the ring look like a letter. At the hospital, in the stairwell, the elevators were in a mood that day. The nurses carried the smell of people who had looked into rooms and left again gently. The stairwell had that echo you remember from your own childhood in public buildings, a kind of populist nostalgia, ropes of greasy hand on the rail. I counted steps, as if counting does anything. The team was 4 people who were asked to like each other. They looked at the hand, looked at each other. They were careful to slow their faces before they showed them to us. "There is an emerging pattern," one said, and then apologized to himself for being the kind of person who uses phrases like that when a family sits in front of him. We cannot confidently assign a cause. The fact that multiple cases have appeared here within days suggests an environmental factor. However, there are reports from other places, nothing formal, nothing published, that say this may be spontaneous. We advise caution. He said, if science returned with clarity, he would be the first to call. He didn't promise. I liked him enough to hate him. One of the doctors reached for the hand. Leo, who had been brave for strangers all week, pulled it back and pressed it to his chest. The motion was small, and small motions have consequences. The teeth, there were 8 now, and I couldn't pretend I wasn't counting, clicked against his sternum with an intimacy I wanted to gouge out of the air. The doctor flinched. I forgave him. We rode a dark elevator down because that's where the hospital had quarantined a quiet. The fluorescent fixtures on the floor buzzed. A woman in a uniform apologized because the coffee stand was closed and they had to turn off the machine. "Out of caution," she said, and then realized to whom she was talking and said, "For safety." Or, "There's a way we betray ourselves with our words." The little mouth in his hand grew a voice no one else heard. It was made of noise, the clicking of the air vent, the hush of the sheet being lifted, the grocery store barcode beep that the machine gave back to me in a pitch I knew the small company of compressors in rooms that keep things. I found myself listening to machines for news. I found myself turning the TV onto a channel between stations and standing at the head of his bed to hear if the static delivered anything to me besides the migraine my mother used to call clever headaches. At night, we fed the hand milk with a syringe because he woke starving and yet couldn't eat air. "My stomach is tired," he said. It was a phrase he made to spare me. He closed his left hand around my wrist when I fed the right hand, as if to keep me from spilling. He fell asleep with his right hand under his cheek like a lover. In the morning, there was a pinked spot on the pillowcase where the wet had leaked. The cat, my mother's loan to us on long terms, refused to sleep in his room. After that night, refused to go near the open door, sat at the baseboard heater in the hall, and looked at me as if I owed it money. Saturday came with a notice from the county through every channel it owns. Public health advisory: report unusual dermatologic or oral symptoms. Do not attempt at-home excision. For water use, see updated guidance. School closures will continue through Wednesday. A mother in the stairwell nodded, as if a head pressed against the notice could change the cleverness of the paper. We exchanged the tight smile of inevitability. I ran the tap for a minute. The water came clear. I filled the kettle and boiled and poured the water into the glass jar we keep for this. The steam laid small beads on the lid, and the lid gave them back to the counter. The jar didn't complain. That's the thing about jars. They don't change. On Sunday, his hand was a mouth, not like a mouth, a mouth. The teeth were complete across the palm, the way a set grows in the first year and the second, in sizes, the small canines, 4 molars. The skin between them had pulled back in places like a gum. In other places, the skin was still flagging across white like a curtain. The cleft of his lifeline had been moved, pushed out toward the heel, twisted into a new path, one that led nowhere I wanted my son to go. He would not let me look at it long. He would not let me touch it. He was not ashamed. He was private. He held it against his chest with the angle of his arm I had seen in men, not children, in waiting rooms at dusk. When I tried to be the mother who insisted, something in him went hard, and something in me wept without tears. The sound of chewing now came steadily, quietly, with that politeness you assign to rooms with bad acoustics. The jaw moved in small ways under the skin. When I put my ear near it, I heard the work of it. I turned off the refrigerator again and stood in the kitchen with its quiet, the texture of the inside of a throat, and told my body to stop what it was doing, and it obeyed me for the length of a single breath. I did not take him to church because I have not taken anyone there since he was a baby and cried at the organ, and I found out I prefer my Sunday mornings to be made not of strangers, prayers, but of folding towels and putting receipts down on plates and running my fingers along the ledger of compliments I hadn't paid and good talk I had not yet managed. I washed the towels. The washer thudded its way across the floorboards in the basement, then found its place again, because that is how it has learned to write forgiveness into our domestic crimes. The hose water suds slipped along the sink and went down the throat of the house. The stairwell's fluorescent hummed. The traffic light did its duty. Distant sirens told neighbors stories I wasn't allowed to know except in their terms: response time, intersection, severity. He slept in the afternoon, and the hand-mouth slept too, if you can call it that. I pressed my ear to it then gently, the way a person does when they are much too old to play at the sea, and still you put your ear to a shell to hear a world that does not care. There it was, the small breath, the rhythm that does not belong to lungs but belongs to eating. The cat turned its head toward us and then turned it away. A siren leaned through the window at the right distance. The towel on the oven handle fell off, and I left it on the floor because I could not bear to pretend the day could be asked to be dignified. Monday, the beacon opened with a handwritten sign on the door in hideous big block letters: card only, network down. She had wanted to write cash only. The network for the cards had done the usual night close thing, but the bank machine technology taught us both a different sentence. The barcode scanner at the counter beeped, and in my head it became the sound of the hand mouth, which made me a worse person. The lottery machine coughed and printed a line of tickets with zeros, as if to remind me that numbers can go quiet too. I counted cases of canned beans to feel like I existed in a world that made sense. 12, 12, 12. I wrote the number on the paper. The paper took my writing and didn't argue. When I got home, the mug's ring had spread. The ring had touched and overlapped with the shadow of a grocery receipt, and the receipt had soaked up a delicate brown map. Under the lighthouse magnet, the paper's list, bread, milk, trembled when the refrigerator compressor let itself be heard. I left the ring alone. I wiped a clean place next to it and put my hand there instead. Something I did because some decisions must be visible to someone, even the table. That night he woke with the kind of patience that scares you. He sat up slowly. He looked at me with an adult's face inside a child's. "I'm hungry," he said. He did not open his mouth. He looked at his right hand. He offered it to me like a guest. The phrasing gathered itself in my throat and made me into someone I am not, someone my mother could have been. I went to the kitchen and took out the jar of applesauce and a syringe we have, because colds and medicine have been our shared career. I put the towel on my knee because I'm not foolish. I fed the hand mouth. I pressed the applesauce to the line of teeth and the tongue wherever it is, the tissue between them, a living membrane, pulled it in. I did not look at it long. I am brave in small ways, and this was not the small kind. He watched me as if I were a film, and he were older and lonely. He had applesauce on his wrist. I wiped it with the towel. The towel smelled like the laundry detergent we buy when I feel wealthy. It felt like trying to call the day by a different name to save it. "At school today," he said later, lying back down, his voice somewhere between sleep and the place where people tell the truth, "Mrs. Hallow told us to wash our hands, and we all lined up and nobody used the water." He thought carefully. "We all put soap on and then looked at it for a long time." "What happened then?" I asked him. "We wiped it off on the towels," he said, as if reporting a common practice that didn't hurt because it had been shared. He turned his face to the wall. His right hand moved as if something were inside it that stood up and stretched. The chewing returned. He sang under his breath to drown it, a song about a whale that appears in worksheets and learns to say no. On Wednesday, the county truck came down Harbor Street with a man standing on the back, holding a hose, like it mattered who was watching him perform his duty. The water sprayed into a barrel, and the barrel foamed, and it looked like atonement. The notice on our door had a new notice over it with a corrected phone number. I took a picture because I couldn't stop myself. At the beacon, the cooler compressor clicked 3 times in a row, and the sound felt like my name. A woman loosened the lid on a jar of pickles because her hands could not, and asked me to help. I did, and the pop of the seal made tears rise into my eyes as if I had reminded the day of its good manners. A man bought a towel and a spoon and a box of cereal and a lottery ticket, and I wanted to hit him for trying to make a home out of that combination of items, and I wanted to say, "That is how you actually do it, brother, well done." When I got home, the power had gone out and come back. The clocks had their blinking shock. The fridge had done its whoop on restart. The stairwell smelled like the upstairs neighbor's cabbage grown true this time. In that quiet, not quiet, the hand-mouth made its quiet work again, an industry that could be hired by any town anywhere if the town was wicked enough. I stood in the hall and felt, ridiculous I know, the urge to clap, small, once, to see if the mouth would stop, as if sound could make sound obey. I didn't. At 3 in the morning, the question got asked. It had been walking toward us all week. The hand-mouth woke me from the dream where I ran down the school hall and the lockers watched me. Leo rolled to his back and held his hand up in the light that came from the corner where the traffic light made the window a simple morality play. He held it out to me, the right hand, the palm toward the ceiling, the teeth a pale, childish line. He looked at me with his eyes not crying. I took his hand, the wrist in my left, gently. I put my ear toward it, listened to the small, neat chewing that had the politeness of a machine, and I made a decision that arrived without the need for dirt or honor. I put my left palm to his right palm face to face, skin to skin, and the mouth bit me. It did not swallow me. That is the thing you think you have to survive. It did not tear. It bit hard enough to mark the skin as if to test and then released. The bite hurt in a clean way. It made my skin flare and then cool into a circle. I pursed my lips to say don't, to say I am not the thing you get, but the mouth had no ears. It was hungry, not cruel. I thought not for the first time. Not all hungers deserve names. I washed the bite in the sink with boiled water that had cooled because the county taught me to be a person who believes in its little grammar. The towel on the oven handle took the wet from my fingers with the same courtesy it would have offered anyone else. The refrigerator hummed. The mug's ring had become an amber stain I liked. The traffic light threw its quiet color on the floor and then took it away and then offered another. The stairwell light died and returned with a sound like an apology. My palm hurt cleanly and then less. I dried it. I went back to the bed. I held his hand. I slept. In the morning, the white point on my own left palm was almost nothing. A pinprick. Something I could have ignored if I had been a person with someone else's life. I rubbed at it. It held. The skin was hard there, a little pearl under the surface. It could have been a blister. It could have been a callus. It could have been, might have been a seed you are not allowed to blame anyone for. I told no one. At the Beacon, I rang up a woman who works at the ceramics factory up by the highway. Clay dust sat on her jacket like she had designed a weather. She had her cash folded into a wedge, and she set it down on the counter, and the smell of money, that little iron tang, filled my nose. The barcode beeped, and I heard the hand-mouth in it, and my stomach chose not to be a person anymore. I opened the Scanner S battery compartment when no one was watching, and pressed the battery out and back in, just to make the beeps stop. They returned obediently. I don't know why I thought they would have learned something. The county called everyone at once, their voice inhabiting our phones, and then our kitchens, a reverse siren. Public health Q&A at the community center. Limit water use. No bathing infants in tap. Dentist offices closed until further guidance. The ferry cancelled a run. The cannery shut for cleaning. The grocery S milk delivery stalled in traffic while trucks waited at an intersection controlled by men with stop-slow paddles who looked like they were practicing for a meaningful play. At night, with the refrigerator humming without needing my faith, with the traffic light counting, with the cat silent on the floor at the edge of the bed, with the stairwell light long since dead of its delicate disease, I lay with my palm against his again, and this time I did not move when the mouth bit me. It did its work. It took what it wanted in a small, reasonable way and then stopped. The mark it made on my palm the second time matched the first. Two small half circles, like when you press a ring too long into a soft thing. I put my fingers into his hair, and he slept with his mouth open like a child and like a man who is doing what he can. By the end of the week, the two pinpricks on my left palm had become a line. Not teeth, not yet. Something thinking about becoming. I wore a glove at work because the cooler air in the back made the skin there ache, and because I didn't want to see any more curiosity in any eyes. The scanner beeped. The compressor clicked. The fluorescent hummed. The distant sirens answered themselves. The hose water in the building's pipes argued in the stairwell. The traffic light tried to teach us how to share. The mug's ring dried to a color I could live with, then spread a little, then stopped. The towel fell. I let it. The receipts curled like tired tongues under magnets with a lighthouse that has never seen the sea. I will not tell you what I believe, because I don't. I have our town's words. I have out of an abundance. I have caution. I have we are monitoring. I have please check back here for updates. I have due to staffing. I have from the team this. We cannot say cause. We have seen like cases in towns with a river, in places with a factory, in homes where no one has done anything wrong. There are studies, there are not conclusions. There is, please keep us updated on changes. There is, please keep us updated on changes. Thank you for allowing us the privilege of participating in your son's care. The privilege is mine. That is the sentence that arrives at the end of every night. It sounds like the refrigerator when it starts a cycle, steady and without drama. It sounds like the barcode beep, spent of its pride. It sounds like the fluorescent tube humming its one polite note. It sounds like the hose water summoning us back to our first small summer. It sounds like a thing that comes hungry and will continue to. This morning, early, before the gulls laid their complaints across the windows, before the kid down the block practiced the trumpet with the stubbornness that might make him into an adult who deserves something, I woke. Leo slept. His right hand rested palm up on the pillow between us. The teeth gleamed in the thin light. They were clean. I put my left palm next to his, and the hard line under my skin said the word, I will not give it. I turned my hand, and in the shallow crescent of my palm, nearer the wrist, something small and white pressed back. I pressed my lips together and counted the traffic light cycles until my mouth could be my own again. Then I got up and put water on to boil. I rinsed my mug and placed it on the counter, and when I lifted it there was a circle new, something to hold the morning to the day. The towel on the oven handle had forgotten itself during the night. I left it crooked. The refrigerator hummed at a pitch I know. The stairwell light had died. The hose water in the pipe above the sink sighed like it was being told to be patient. At the community center bulletin board, I'd posted a notice last week about seeing our old cat, Gray, with a nick in her ear, missing from the upstairs neighbor since Sunday. No one had torn off a number. Next to it, the county's flyer flapped under Scotch tape, with a tear that made it look like a mouth. We live like this. You do too, somewhere else. We stand in front of colored paper with official stamps, and we put our finger on the phone number, and we do not call. I have stopped pressing my ear to his hand to listen. I do not need to hear the bite. I know its rhythm now, the way I know the sound of the traffic outside our building, and which sirens mean a fire, and which belong to the police, and which belong to the ambulance that carries my neighbors and quickly leaves without them. I spread a little applesauce on a spoon and hand it to Leo, and he brings it to his mouth and eats like a boy. And then I bring the syringe and bring the other to his hand, and he eats like a boy again. He looks at me with his eyes that will not grow older than I get to see, and does not ask me anything because he sees in my face all the explanations I can bear to craft. In the night when I lie awake and the refrigerator rests between cycles and the traffic light makes the room a long, slow code of color, and the stairwell holds its breath, and the building takes its weight, and the wind at the corner catches the paper signs, and the downtown sirens are at least a dozen blocks away, That is when the little pressure begins in my palm, the small, precise ache of something that has decided to declare itself. I press my hand to the sheet and feel the sheet declare me back. It is not a bargain. It is a recognition. I do not pray. I do not swear. I lie there counting the rhythm that is not mine, and then the one that is. And then I go to the kitchen and put water on to boil. The county will clear the advisory or extend it or forget to call this town. And we will read it on our phones with a line that ends in a period which sometimes is respect and sometimes another kind of careless hurt. The school will print schedules with new recess times. The clinic will buy a new scanner and set it to a tone that accidentally imitates the beeps at the beacon. And I will flinch the first week, and then I won't. The ferry will run and not run, and the tide chart will be taped on the inside of the window. Diamonds walking left to right in a way that makes sense if you refuse all the other sense. The towels will let me fold them right. The mug will let me clean its ring. The receipts under the lighthouse magnet will curl, the refrigerator will hum, the compressor will click, the fluorescent will buzz, the sirens will measure other stories, the hose water will learn the names of basements and registers and carry them out to the sewer where we can call it a river again. My boy will hold my hand with the hand that hasn't betrayed him, and the other one will lie there a second mouth, learning ours without asking, perfectly wrong and perfectly itself, and we will keep a quiet at the center of the apartment large enough to shelter it. When the morning comes that I cannot cover the points in my own palm anymore, I will go to the clinic. I will stand under their humming light and let them write my name on a line and then another line. I will sit in their chair, and a kind person who believes in words will take my hand and turn it over and look at me and then say nothing for the correct number of seconds. We will tell each other all our cautions. We will write numbers on a paper. I will come home. I will hold my boy's hand when he gives it to me, because he will. And I will breathe in the rhythm that does not belong to lungs. And we will listen to the refrigerator, and a traffic light will throw its body onto our wall. And in that reliable, buzzing, clicking, beeping chorus, we will carry the small, hungry thing we have been given until the minute when we are no longer required, and the apartment, finally free of us, breathes once and then resumes its hum.